Hello everyone, and welcome to Maddie Bakes Sourdough. I'm Maddie, and this is my very first official YouTube video, so thank you so much for being here. Today I'm going to be walking you through how to make a simple sourdough loaf. This recipe is great for beginners and people who are just getting into sourdough. I feel that this recipe is pretty dependable and an easy go-to for myself when I'm needing to just make a loaf quick. Since this is my first video, I'm still kind of figuring out the filming process, so bear with me on the camera quality, lighting, and angles. The goal is the more I keep doing this, the better I get. I'm just excited to share what I've learned throughout the sourdough process for myself and help you make some really good sourdough bread. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so for this, you're going to need a bowl, a scale, obviously your active sourdough starter, and a spatula. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm putting about 100 grams of active sourdough in the bowl. And then I'm going to follow that up with 375 grams of lukewarm water. Once the water is all poured in, you're going to want to give that a really good mix. I've read that that is one of the most important things when making bread. I'm not sure if that's true, but after I read that, I just make sure to do it all the time now. After you've given that a really good mix, you're going to go in and put some flour in. I'm using bread flour here, but you could use all-purpose. I'm putting about 500 grams of flour. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to put some sea salt, about 7 grams of that in there. So now you have all of your ingredients and you're going to give that a really good mix with a spatula, or what I'm using, I don't know the proper name of this utensil, but I'm going to say a dough mixer. I'm not sure on that, but it works great. And you're going to want to make sure that it is pretty mixed, that there are no dry bits left. You're gonna see me kind of go in here with my hands just to really get a feel for the dough and make sure everything is well combined. So once you have it all mixed together, take some plastic wrap or a towel and you're gonna want to cover that for about 30 minutes to an hour and set it aside for that time just to let the gluten rest. So once it's been about 30 minutes to an hour, take that plastic wrap off and we are going to begin our series of stretch and folds. Over the next 3 hours, you'll do a series of stretch and folds every 30 to 45 minutes. So what you see me doing here, I believe is called a coil fold, which is basically just stretching the dough up and kind of folding it over onto itself. You can do this a few times, rotating the bowl each time. So once you've finished your stretch and folds, you're gonna wanna cover that back up, push it to the side and let it sit for another 30 to 45 minutes. Now, prior to this, I have folded my dough 2 times. I just didn't get it on video. So this is my 4th time of stretch and folds. And you can see that the dough is becoming a lot smoother. You can see maybe on the top there's some air bubbles kind of forming. The dough becomes much smoother and easier to work with. So after your last set of stretch and folds, you're going to let the dough rest for about 4 to 6 hours on your kitchen counter. Now you can see in this shot, after 4 to 6 hours, my dough is ready to be shaped. It's pulling away from the sides of the bowl, and there's some air bubbles kind of forming on top. Now what you're going to do is flour a surface and pour that dough out onto the counter for its shaping. Now to shape it, I'm kind of getting the dough into a rectangle square shape, and I'm going to fold each side of the dough onto itself, like so. Once I've folded each side onto itself, I'm going to roll it up like that. And then I'm going to kind of push and pull the dough first away and then towards me to really seal the bottom of the dough so it's not open and we can kind of get a smoother dough. Now once your dough is ready to be placed in a bowl, or as I have, a banneton, which is not necessary, you're going to want to make sure you seal that bottom. So kind of do some crisscross folds like I'm doing. And then once our dough is all settled, I'm going to take a grocery sack and use that to cover my dough, where I'm then going to place in the fridge for a cold proof. This is something that, people say helps enhance the flavor of the dough. I think you could probably just lay it out for a couple more hours on the countertop and bake later that day if you so choose. So it is the next day now, and I am getting my Dutch oven out, and I'm going to preheat the oven with the Dutch oven inside to get the Tupperware all warmed up for my dough before it is baked. While that Dutch oven is preheating, take your dough out of the fridge and let it sit on the counter to get more room temp before you bake it. Once it's room temp, you can then place it on parchment paper if you do not have this little handy dandy bread holder, I guess. Parchment paper works just as well. And then I'm going to flour the dough, put some on top, and then score it. Scoring it is not necessary. I'm not the greatest by any means, but you can use a knife to just kind of make some indentions. It's kind of a way for the bread to easily open up when it's baking, and it kind of looks, pretty at the end after you've baked it with the flour on top to kind of show those markings a little bit better. So once you've placed your dough in the Dutch oven at 450, you're going to want to bake it covered for 20 minutes. I don't show this earlier, but you take it out after 20 minutes and then bake it for 30 to 40 minutes uncovered. So here you can see my dough. I'm cutting it to show you guys the inside. I was pretty satisfied with the turnout of it. So once you have your freshly baked sourdough, you can kind of use it for whatever. You can use it for sandwiches. Here I'm showing you clips of one morning I used it to make French toast. So to store it, you can store it in a bread bag or a airtight container. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today and watching this video.